It's a great opportunity that they've given the industry coming to support us. And the whole essence of the program is to ensure that they are supporting upcoming artists in places that have creative hubs. So today we're going to talk about how community-run spaces and collaboration can nurture Kenya alternative music. But before I get into that, I'll let my panelists introduce themselves. I don't want to get anything wrong.
What's up? Hey, so my name is Bakita. I'm a multidisciplinary artist out here in Nairobi. What that means is I'm a stage and set designer, more specifically a production designer, and I work as a creative director, musician as well, model sometimes, you know, everything, yeah. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Jokia, and I'm the founder of Radio 254. And I love Kenyan music, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, please. I hope you guys are well. My name is DJ Shock. I've been DJing for a good while, and I teach DJing at Santuri. There's so much to tell you. I'm a budding producer, and I'm hoping to have a remix party at some point. Maybe it'll come through when that materializes. Yeah, it's so great to see so many of you here. Thank you for coming.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin, aka Willie Will, aka Batman Batu. I'm a radio show host, DJ, and I work at Santuri. One of these community spaces.
Great, so let's get the ball rolling. So the first thing that I really want to ask is, what would you describe as alternative music? I mean, I think that's the biggest question. That's the elephant in the room. And I think I want everyone to answer that if you're all comfortable with that.
So I think that in the scene that we have, there's a lot of mainstream music. So there's the music we hear on the radio all the time. There's the artists who are heavily marketed, can afford videos, part of the mainstream. But we also have a lot of upcoming artists who are trying to make it, or trying to come out of the scene. But now alternative music is now people who have a sound that they are producing on their own that is different, that might not be as accepted as what the mainstream is. So there's the mainstream, what they're playing on the radio, what the DJs know, the Angelas, but then there's also alternative music that might not sound like what's popular or mainstream, but still has a lot of appreciation. If you look for Mao or Maya, Molo, there's artists here who might not be on Kiss 100 or mainstream all the time, but they have a scene and it's a different sound and it has its own appreciation and market.
Bakita?
I'd say I think alternative music, especially in Nairobi, is music that borrows from a lot of different genres. I feel like mainstream music very much embodies what, as a society, maybe in Kenya we like and follow and everything. But alternative music borrows from so many different genres. You could have jazz. It could be all rock. It could be pop. I mean, just the fusion of so many different things is what makes it different, and seeping into, I don't know, stepping out of it, just being what we're used to. Yeah.
Really?
Is that feedback coming from me? No? Okay. I think that's a really great question, because I feel like, we're all here for Boiler Room, and this particular edition is kind of, in a way, really bringing a lot of alternative sounds. It feels like we're coming back to the first one in many ways, where we had a really diverse lineup. I see a lot of parallels there. I'd say first, I have a lot of love for mainstream music. I love to hear those bangers either on the radio or in the club. I got love for that. I think alternative is yeah, like something that really takes you out of the mainstream, out of stuff that you've heard before, stimulates you in kind of like expanding your imagination and expanding your ears at the same time as you're really getting some pleasure out of listening to stuff. And I think I'd also say that alternative is relative, because what might be mainstream in one region might be very different in another. And so I think how you position yourself in the music scene as a producer, as a DJ, it's not so much about genres so much as it is about like what you're doing within the music ecosystem. Yeah.
Can I ask everybody, how many of you put your hands up if you listen to mainstream music? That's great. Put your hand up if you listen to alternative music. Just about the same number. And put your hand up if you listen to both. Are you tired of stretching? Okay, yeah, I would say that alternative is what, I agree with what everybody else said. It's what's not commercial, it's not mainstream, it's different. It's what is not necessarily popular in the mainstream space, but it has its niches. There's people who love amapiano, there's people who love house, there's people who love tech. These are not genres that you can play universally everywhere across the country, per se, as opposed to something like what you said, like Boutros, some of his tracks, or even old school guys like Waire and Nazizi. So that's how I describe it for me.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that, guys. What do you think is the position of alternative music in Kenya's music industry? Joker.
I think there's a really growing alternative scene in terms of performances, in terms of new acts, in terms of production and like people putting out, because if you look at like they're doing events on their own, so there's enough crowds where they can gather maybe 300 to 500 people to come and listen to alternative music, and there's no like big act on the lineup. It's something in-house at the Shelter or at the Mist. Like we have spaces where alternative acts don't have to go get a radio interview, or they don't have to like figure out how do we put ourselves out there. They already have this niche like listenership of people who love this and want to hear that. So I feel like we're in a good space with alternative music when you look at the shows, when you look at how much music is being put out, and even the collaboration. I really love the collaboration and even like the producers, because there's sounds where you'd be like, that doesn't sound Kenyan, but it's Kenyan. And I think that's the coolest thing about it, where it's like, I'll hear an act and like, I don't even believe it's Kenyan. And it's like, that's interesting. And I feel like we can nurture. I feel like we have a lot of great acts, but how do we nurture them? Because like artists like New Funk releases music every Friday and it's alternative, but like how do you unify this? How do you get people to market this? So I feel like it's at a position where we have a great opportunity to grow it. It's just figuring out what the mechanisms look like in terms of that.
Okay. There's normally a great debate about alternative and alte. We were discussing about it today with Willie, so I'll pose this question to you. What's alte and what's alternative, and do we have alte in the country? Or because when alte came from West Africa, correct me if I'm wrong, it was alternative music and they shortened it to alte. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. So I'm thinking, isn't it almost just the same thing, but we struggle so hard in drawing a difference and calling it alternative and making it something that's wholly Kenyan?
Personally, like I wasn't born in Kenya, so I'm Rwandese and Canadian. So I think my perspective on this might not be as informed as a lot of other people here, but the trend that I noticed from being in Kenya for 5 years and just interviewing musicians and going to their shows and working with them and then teaching at Century Electronic Music Academy, like shout out to Sema. I noticed that alternative is kind of like a catch-all term for people who are not making stuff that they consider mainstream, but like, my perspective is, again, alternative is something that's very relative. somebody who might be making R&B is very, and a specific type of R&B can be very alternative here in Kenya. Somebody who's making house music, like Shock said, is very alternative, whereas, you know, in other countries like house and EDM are actually quite popular. What I think interests me about that distinction with alternative music is that people actually bring their own vibe to it, and people are making sounds that, to me, and this might differ from other people, and I think it's a great panel you assembled because we're gonna, you know, really be looking at things a little bit differently, is that I think, you know, people are really bringing their own flavor, and you can tell that it's Kenyan. So somebody like Nabalayo, who has this really great record called Changanya, I recommend everybody to check that out. She's bringing in like influences from metal, like Norwegian metal, I think, and then R&B, and a lot of other different genres, but then she's really digging deep into traditional Kenyan music, traditional Kenyan genres, and singing in Swahili, and then, yeah, I might be wrong, but other traditional languages as well. That is deeply alternative because you don't hear Kenyan music like that. It stands out from everything else that's coming out in the country, and it also stands out from anything that you would hear anywhere else. So I think there's room for things to sound Kenyan, but to also be alternative. And for me, that sweet spot is where people are really feeling free, expressing themselves, reaching out, getting influences, and creating something that's completely new, and really stimulating their audiences with those sounds. I don't think I addressed the Alte thing, I'm sorry. I'm not that well versed, but I love Santi. Santi is like an Alte artist, right?
Yeah.
That's as much as I know.
Okay. What about you, Bakita, being an artist in the alternative scene?
I feel like the alternative scene in Nairobi especially, or rather in Kenya, I'd say that's where we're kind of finding our groove in Kenyan music, especially since, I mean, a lot of our culture was stripped through colonization, obviously, and what people assume Kenyan music should listen and feel like is maybe not necessarily what we've always been ready and willing to express ourselves as. Alternative music and the alternative scene in general allows Kenyans to step into deeper expression, deeper confidence in, you know, finding different ways and different colors and different voices to share their work. Like what was being said about Nabalayo, like her work really, really puts that forward in the sense that it borrows from traditional music, but it also looks forward in, you know, the different uses of instrumentation, in the way that her production is built up. It's all just, I don't know, and that's where we're finding our sound. And even in the visual scene, you'll see how alternative art is very much also influencing the mainstream artists, because a lot of their music videos will still have a lot of alternative, you know, creative direction ideas and all of that. So yeah, I feel like Kenya is finding, or rather as Nairobi, we're finding our rhythm in the alternative scene. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Keep it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thanks for that. So we listen to some little alternative music, then we go back to part 2, okay? Yeah.
Baada simu yangu pia imefika hiyo place. Inakatananga but I guess ni maisha.
All right, guys. We're back for the second part of the conversation. And I want to take it on a different level, so I'll pose these questions to you, Bakita. How would you say the creative space in the country is looking for the marginalized community?
I mean, in the sense of now the LGBTQ community, I'd say generally we're opening up or having a lot of space opened up for us, and especially I guess now having the alternative scene blowing up is giving a lot of space for queer expression. Because I mean, queerness is bigger than sexuality, it's bigger than gender expression, it's even deeper rooted in queer thought and understanding that expression is larger than, you know, I guess what we usually assume it is. Expression is about just letting people be and letting people show themselves. And so since the alternative scene is allowing people to come out and just share music for the sake of sharing music that they're passionate about, it's also opening up that space for queer artists to come out and share music about love, about queer love, about queer encouragement, about, you know, just anything and everything that queer people want to talk about. We're still definitely experiencing pushback from some of the heterosexuals in the community. But, I mean, everything has room to grow, and the queer community is growing in and within itself. And just because not all the doors are open yet doesn't mean that they won't be, doesn't mean that we should stop banging them down. So yeah, we're growing, and it's beautiful to see it happen and to be part of it.
Thank you for that. So over the years, we've seen that spaces have been created that are, in terms of creativity, to support creativity, and it has me thinking, do we have spaces that do support the marginalized, or do you have to find a way to shun yourself in so that you can be able to fit in a space that's heterosexual friendly?
I mean, unless the bag has to pay, I don't feel like queer people feel like we need to fit into anything that's for the heteros. I mean, we create these spaces for ourselves. Personally, I'm part of a team and an organization called Metamore, and our biggest philosophy is being able to cater safe and loving spaces for queer people to be able to come and be with each other that, you know, outside of like issues with like finances and like, you know, just come and not have to worry about like paying like large amounts of money for tickets. And that allows queer people to just come and express themselves. There's Wine Down, which allows queer people and women to interact with each other and be present and share space. There's the Khan Network, you know, Queer Africa Network, which opens opportunities for queer people to be able to interact with different queers in the continent, in the like country, in the world. Yeah, so it's queer people are creating space for themselves, and yeah, being part of that and seeing that all happen is so, I feel like it's about time. Queerness is so inherently African. Being non-binary and not adhering to gender norms is so African. So yeah, they're finally catching up, and we're happy to see it.
Okay, so DJ Shock. Sometimes as women in the industry, we often feel ignored, left out, or just under-prioritized. How do you think as women we can be able to educate men, not only on things like respect or on things, but on showing them about the relevance of not being a woman in the game, but the skill that you're giving out is what's important.
So are we talking about the music industry specifically?
Yes.
I do remember a meeting where we were at Safaricom House, and many of you know Safaricom House would have several gatherings for different things. for talks, for conferences, for events. And there's one event I was in, which was women in music getting together. And a significant number of those women came with their musical instrument. They are musically literate, they can read and write music, and they were all in, like they were very serious about what they had come to do in terms of banding together to learn from each other. And that's one space that I've seen. Another space is Santuri itself, where we have a significant number of women who are music producers, and also women who are also learning sound engineering. As recently as even this week, there was a Soul Sisters get together where for a week they learn sound engineering, they are soldering wires. There's the joke, they call themselves Solder Boy, and so. But the point is, if you are keeping on putting out good work, no matter what people say, just running your race and not worrying about what people think of you, at some point you're going to gain momentum and people are going to notice. In my space as a DJ, I find that there were a few clients who would come and say, oh, we needed a female DJ. And that's all right, International Women's Day and October events, that's fine, but you also need to know I can do the events that you call men for as well, right? So it's like you have to keep putting out the work, even if it's just to make a lot of mixes and make sure you're in events. I've done events pro bono, just for the visibility and the networking, as well as some really expensive events. So you just have to keep grinding and keep putting out good work as often as you can and prove yourself. Have that proof of concept, have that visibility.
Great. Thank you for that. So,
can I touch on that topic real
Yeah.
quick? I want to say, I think I've seen the scene change a lot in the last 5 years, and I think when we started working with artists as recently as even 3 years ago, we started making sure that back when we had funding, the students that would come into the school, we made sure we had a quota so that the classes wouldn't be just filled with male-identifying artists, right? And this was really hard because we found that there was a barrier already from people who had interest or who had access or who were even in our network. And so I think probably venues and clubs, electronic music organizations will face the same barrier. They've been working in this kind of male-centered industry, and this is not unique to Kenya. But that means all their networks and all the people that they can call for gigs, all the people they can call for sound engineering, they're guys. And so even if they wanted to make that switch, they actually have to do way more effort than just to select the women or the non-male identifying people who are applying. They actually have to build at a more community level so that you have enough applicants to choose from a bigger pool. So Santuri's been doing that, and everything from our showcases to our classrooms, and I think we've really seen a big impact because now other clubs that are more mainstream, have never been concerned by gender, have started actually putting up these diverse lineups, and there's actually an effect. So I think there's a ripple effect when people kind of stand together against people who are not against people who are being marginalized, but against marginalization. I think that it actually multiplies. And it's not just for women, it's also for the queer community. And I'm really excited and I'm enthusiastic about the change that I'm seeing in this city. Yeah.
great. Thanks for that. So, growing up, I think Nazizi was perhaps the only female artist that I really knew well. And if we compare 20 years from now, the industry has changed, that's true, but do you think we can get to a point where both women and men can coexist at the same time without it being termed that if a woman succeeds, you've either slept with that man or you've done something funny? it becomes more of your skill. Do you think we can reach to that point, or have we reached that point? Njoke?
I think of a lot of female artists who are big right now. I think of like Brandy Minor, for example. You look at like Brandy's journey. I have like music from Brandy in like 2010. We're in 2023, like 13 years later. You can see like a lot of women have been able to put in a lot of work, and you can see what they've been able to do. Look at Coco M, for example. Like Coco M is an amazing DJ, and it's like if you put in the work, it pays off. I honestly think if you don't give up, and it's hard, everything is hard, but I genuinely think that if women, despite all the challenges, can keep pushing and face this adversity, that you'll always end up on the other side better off. And the opportunities are there. Unfortunately, you have to fight for them, and it shouldn't be that way. But you guys have a rightful place here. When you look at like Nadia Mokami, or you look at Bakita, or you look at Somi Maya Molo, like there's so many dope people who are where they are because of their craft and their work, and they're females. They didn't get there because they're, you know. So I think that there's a lot of great females in the industry. There's a lot of, and there's issues, but like I think that we can demolish these issues by growing these things that are working. There's platforms that are working. Like I love the Wind Down. Every month they have an event where you see female performers, female DJs, female organizers. So like there's opportunities for women despite these challenges. I think if we can just create more with what Centuri is doing in the sense of the classes, whether it's female DJs, female engineers, female producers. So I think despite the challenges, I would encourage the women who are in the industry to keep pushing and not give up.
I just want to say shout out to Sound Sirens, who are putting on the engineering class for women. A shout out to also SimSima, that is providing a space. Like we're talking about collectives that are enabling people who are marginalized to also work together, because I think that's another key. It's not just push hard and keep going. It's like find other people who are in the same predicament that you are and build solidarity together, and things move forward that way. So
Yeah, I agree on that. I'd say a lot of it is based off of collectives banding together to then support women, to then support queer people. Like personally, I don't identify as a woman, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't then have support from the collectives that need to be able to be there for queer people, to push out and to be able to establish themselves in the entertainment industry, you know? And yeah, women and queer people have been fighting this fight for time, for ages. But now that there's a lot more support from a lot more cis and heterosexual spaces, now there's a lot more support there. And like Justine said, Centuri has been there doing that, you know, trying to, or rather opening up a lot of space for making sure that there's a lot more queer and female people on their, you know, teaching roster, in their applicant process, in all of that. And that in itself encourages queer people to keep pushing forward, because imagine like pushing down doors that no one is opening up. It's wild. But if you have people on the other side, as much as not all of those doors are opening up, supporting you, then you have a reason to fight. Then you have a reason to believe that, yeah, actually, we're taking up space. Yeah.
can I do one more, Tella? Just one more thing I just want to say about marginalization. Yeah. Like, there's Kenya is in an economic chokehold, right? So there's also economic marginalization, and I think that's the next wave that's important to tackle, because a lot of the people who are coming out of, you know, neighborhoods that are really underprivileged, they're making it for themselves. And there's a few organizations, Made in Kibera, you know, MSJC. They're working with the people in their communities who don't have access to opportunities, and there's not even anybody flying that flag for them. So I think the next wave is also making sure that people who don't have access, not just based on identity, but also based on their economic status and the opportunities that they don't have access to because of the money that they don't have. And I think there's really room for a broad pool. And this is what we're also trying to do in our classes, is not just you know, focus it entirely on women or people from the LGBTQ community, but also bringing in people who identify as men and people from marginalized economic communities, and accompanying them to be in those spaces in ways that are respectful, and showing these artists that you can co-create together, and you can learn and you can grow out of patterns where you can oppress each other, basically because of ignorance. And so there's an even wider spectrum that we can look at, and I think that's the next wave.
How do you feel that the various community run spaces influence people as individual and also as a community and the music itself? I mean, just apart from getting people who can make music and put it out, how is it also playing an impact in other sectors?
Sorry. So with Radio 254, we initially never had a physical studio space. So we were an online radio station like most online radio stations exist. And for a lot of people, they don't see the need of a physical space because expenses, what do you need a studio for? Because you can literally interview people on Zoom. You can interview people online, so you don't really need a physical space. But it was genuinely 8 months down the road after we started in 2020. In 2021, in April, we got a studio space. And our growth was happening online, but our growth on the ground happened when we opened a studio space. Because when we had a studio space, we were able to interview the artists whose music we were playing. It was cute for us to just be playing the music online, but then when you can now take this music, interview the people whose music you're playing online, hey, what's your name, what's your journey, how did you get to this point? You start to understand the pain points that he's talking about, the marginalization. If I'm just playing your music online, I have no interaction with you, I don't see you on the ground. The same way with events. We would play music on Radio 254, and people would listen from Turkey, from India, from South Africa, from Kericho, from Lamu, and we'd be like, are these people, are they bots who we don't know? And then we'd have events, and you'd see 1,000 people pull up, and people are like, did you pay these people? I'm like, I don't know these people. These are my friends from the internet. Like, we're just playing Kenyan music on the internet and pushing it, and we start connecting with people, whether it's through the interview, whether it's through the event, and we start seeing there's a community here. If we're just online, we would never understand certain things, so we became impactful when we opened up a space. Because then Matilda can walk into the studio, or an artist can walk into the studio, and we start having conversations, and we start having interactions, and start understanding what's happening on the ground. So we've gone to the place where we have 20 million listeners worldwide. We've been able to do advertising for major brands. We've been able to do so much, but the internet is not, it's amazing, but you have to go on the ground and kind of interact with it. I met Bakita for an interview. If I just played your music, you're such a vibe, but I would never know she's a vibe. If we don't connect in scenarios like this. I think that us being able to have the internet is amazing, but we need to now figure out how do we reach more people? How do we create forums such as this one? How do we have more? So I think we have great ideas, but we need execution. So I love what Santuri is doing with execution. I love what we're doing, but we have great ideas and great creatives, but it takes someone putting their money towards it. It takes actual execution and people on the ground. You can't do stuff sending emails or just sitting at home.
Even adding to that, in the queer community, I'd say even the sharing and expression of ballroom, expression is so key and seen. I mean, Wanderlust parties are now allowing queer people to have a space to be able to show up in full drag and not be cast out on the street for doing so, and having a space where people can collectively come together and express themselves is so key in allowing queer people to keep reiterating and living in their freedom and not feeling that they need to, hold themselves back or, not dress up the way they want to go outside. And it's building that space and building that confidence and building that community that really also builds our own security. And yeah.
Thanks for that. So,
can I add something? I would like to point out that you don't need to be in an organization to make an impact. being in an organization definitely helps, but it should not limit you when you say that I'm only one person. There's something called the power of one. I'll give you a real life example. I had a burden to help DJs, and I formed a Facebook group. This was before there was WhatsApp, or Instagram was just starting, and there was no TikTok, right? So Facebook was pretty much where everybody congregated. And I started a Facebook group, and I started sending friend requests to different DJs, and I just typed DJ, and then I got names, and I added them to my group. And I was flexing some type of way when I got to 500 members, you know, and I felt good about it. And I felt, wow, I've built a community, I've done something. And the reason that people allowed me to join, allow me to add them to my Facebook group is because I was sharing knowledge. And by extension, people started sharing knowledge with each other. So discussions were forming, and DJs were following, and then there came a point after 500 members, they started adding each other because knowledge was being shared. And if you go and search for that group now, it has about 27,000 DJs across Kenya and the diaspora. I cannot tell you how humbling it is every time I look at it. And they've even segmented into different WhatsApp groups, and they know that they can look for me. And I even had a WhatsApp group specifically for female DJs at some point, and Coco M and I, she remembers, I had a Bluetooth speaker and nothing else. And Coco M had a little controller, and we said, let's find a room and invite women to come and practice for free. And that's what we did once, twice, thrice. And mind you, I don't have a job. I'm terrified because I need bus fare to get to the thing that I organized, you know, every time. And I was trying to do it every week. And I was just trusting God on it and just saying, every time he came through for me, every single time. And even Justin was there helping us set up. And, you know, it was a labor of love. And he's just that kind heart who just gives. So, and it got to a point where I got recognition from the government that they started inviting me to interact with them, to work with them, such that when COVID came, I was the one called and asked, how can we help DJs? As in, I went to the office of the Permanent Presidential Music Commission with some friends who were also helping me help DJs, and we told them, send money to DJs. They can send you a mix. We don't want to touch the money, just ask them for their number and M-Pesa anyone who applies directly. And that some people survived because of that. One person.
Just on the community spaces, like I also want to shout out Monrea, who everybody should check out her set on Boiler Room. Shout out to Ballantynes and Boiler Room for booking dope-ass Kenyan DJs. Now, Monrea, aside from being an amazing DJ, she's a community organizer. She's brought together a community around techno music, and she runs these events with a collective called Techno, with a zero, and she would host these monthly parties that were completely free. She'd invite people. There was no alcohol there, just natural brews, traditional brews, and she was just trying to create a wholesome space where people could come and share techno music. And some of the DJs who played there, you know, would not get booked in other spaces. There was not really that space for new up-and-coming techno DJs. And she did that with a group of her friends. She took the initiative. She really found people who were passionate about the music genre, and also people who wanted to see something different happen in the city. And it was a space for people from all walks of life, really. I think it was really special, and I always think back to how she was really instrumental, and even though she would take a loss on some events, next month she'd be doing it again just because she wanted to see it happen. She wanted to see the people come together. She wanted to see people connect together. And so I think you have a point about, you know, you don't need to have this big organization behind you. You can build it. You can connect with people. You can create a community. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, even just adding on that, I'd say with Metamoid very much started as that we were at one of our friends' birthday parties and we realized, wow, like so many queer people are here today, and we want to be able to sit in more of this and to be able to do this with anyone and everyone whenever we want to. So the essence of it isn't how much you need to spend, how good you need to look to show up. Are you queer and do you need a space to be yourself? Come through. If you can afford a ticket, you can. If you can't, you can't. If you can afford to buy other people tickets, you can do that as well. But we'll never turn anyone away or say, oh, you can't come. It's just, come share space, come share love, come be in community and feel safe. And I feel like that's what's so crucial in expanding our creative industry and allowing creatives to feel safe in expression and to feel safe in just being themselves.
Cool. Thanks for that. So how do you think, as an artist, how do you think the Kenyan alternative music scene is changing the narration of the East African music scene? What new aspect is it bringing to the table that's different?
Well, what would be different? I feel like as Kenyans, we're very, very focused and very hardworking, and I feel like the way that we're attacking this is very much full force. Like every other day, there's a new song, there's a new artist, and it's like, wow, there's so much space and so much, imagination, and it's so beautiful to watch, being able to see how much work goes in from Kenyan artists, and I feel like that's what sets us apart definitely from our counterparts. In some ways, maybe feeding into capitalism, but we are here and we really take up space and we don't take no for an answer, and the fact that we're able to do that is giving us an edge in the sense that we're not going to rest until we need to get where, or until we expand our creative industry in a way that is everything just feeling inherently Kenyan. Yeah.
Great. So the government of late has been actively trying to support artists. As Jishak has said, she was contacted. We also had the concert last year by the governor, sorry. So I'm trying to think, how is the government's participation in community-run spaces and also in the entertainment scene, how is it beneficial or impactful? And is this something that can change the narration of the Kenyan music scene?
I want to say that the reason that the government interacts with us, there is that need to build up youth and women and minority communities. But the thing that will make it easier for them is if your community provides data. If they don't have data, they don't have anything to work with, especially financial data. Like when it comes to the creative space, the creative economy, they don't have data on how many rappers are out there, what are they making, how many DJs are out there, what are they making, how is the film industry, how are fashion designers doing. They need that information, and sometimes people hide that information because of competition, because of fear. There's so many reasons why people are reluctant to hand over that information. I think primarily it's because they don't want to be taxed. So, fair enough. Yeah, so, but I think, I would argue this. I agree, many of us don't want to be taxed, but I found that the wealthiest companies in this country are able to make money because they pay tax. Like if you have that tax certificate, if you have an ETR machine, for whatever reason, it's like, oh, you have that thing too, let's do business together. But if you're not paying tax, well, I'll do it with this guy because he's paying tax. So I'm not going to get in trouble if I do business with this guy. That's how they're reasoning. So it's just something to, I know it's a bit conflicting because some of us are not making enough money anyway to rationalize paying tax, but it's just something to take home and think about. And that's the long and short of it, I would say.
Chokia?
I'll say from my perspective in regards to your question, I see two issues. I see the first and the biggest issue being the dissemination of information in the sense of there are so many government opportunities for artists and creatives, both at the national government level, but at the county level. But the issue is the dissemination of information in the sense of the other day there was like Atalanta Hella competition for the logos. 50 people knew about that, so they don't apply. But there's actually cash prizes, 500,000, 300,000, 100,000. The other day, county government of Kiambu was like, yo, do you want to do events? Come do events. But I think the dissemination of information really hurts a lot of people because the people who need this information don't get it. And then there's a guy who knows there's a tender. So if you tender for this, you'll be... So they keep it to themselves. Where I've walked in a lot of rooms where I want help and I can't get help. And then I'll meet some random person who does not know me. They'll be like, there's an opportunity here, apply for this grant. It's $50,000. Why don't we know about these things? That the government, like they have millions they're giving away, but the opportunities are not being advertised, publicized. Like Santuri can get money from minister. Who told you? You'll go there and you'll be told there's no such thing, but it's there, it exists. So I think my biggest issue would be government-wise dissemination of information, because people, you don't know because you don't know. No one can accuse you of being ignorant. You're not stupid because you're ignorant. You don't know. If you don't know there's 100 million there, you just don't know. So that's an issue for me. But number two, I've been playing 100% Kenyan music on the radio for 3 years now. I've gone to the governor, I've gone to the president. They don't care. Even they don't understand. Like you're telling them, someone on like a ministerial level told me, is there even enough good Kenyan music to play all the time? I'm like, so the people who could help us are not interested in helping us. I don't know why.
I feel
But dissemination of information, there's information out there of how the government can help us. We're not being given that information, and I'm being genuine. But number two, the people who could help us, shout out to Sakaja for giving us a festival. He could do that, and I mean Sonko could have done that, and Uhuru could have, anybody could have done that. So I appreciate the people who are able to do something, but there's a lot of people who could do something who are not doing anything, and that's the government.
I feel like the government is only interested once they see how taxation in our industry benefits them. And that's most likely why they're trying to gather as much information on the creative scene as where we are now. I mean, it's no secret that like Kenyan music and Kenyan creative industry is coming up very quickly, very fast. And so now we have the government's attention because they're seeing that there's money flowing here. So yes, we should pay taxes, but the question is, should we really be focused on leaning into government systems that will still keep us in the same systems of oppression? For queer people, there isn't really space. Even in this like dispensing of money, we still are very much illegal in this space. And it's like, I don't know, what's the real intention behind all this, you know? We just really need to sit back and really look at that.
If I may add, because I've interacted with government quite a bit, so it goes back again to the thing about information. There are other economies that make more than we do. The blue economy, which is things that come out of the water, fish, hyacinth and whatnot, they make more money than we do. Our tourism, our food exports, our minerals, there are several industries that make more money than we do. And they will give attention based on the priority, based on which industry is the most profitable to sustain government. Which again is why it is important to have collectives that have information that you can share. You don't have to share every single thing, just the information that can cause you to have a profitable partnership with the government and move forward in your space, whether that space is music or fashion or being an influencer or whatever it is. You can only do so much as a lone ranger. You need to find other people, band together, like he said, and form a community and show that what your community is doing is important to the ecosystem. That is what the private sector have done, all the companies with KEPSA. That is what media stations have done. Broadcast stations have their own association, and it doesn't have to be a formal organization. Even a self-help group that can say, yeah, we helped this many people get off the streets, we helped this many youth get some jobs. You need to have something to show, which is why people give funding, because they want to keep that good thing going.
Yeah, I just wanted to bounce off what Njukia said. I think sharing information is really key. That's one thing we try to do with our program. Like when students graduate, they're on a mailing list, and with like our tiny staff and the like little hours that we have to spare, we're scouring through these opportunities online, trying to see whether some of these like our graduates would be eligible for, and if there's a producer or DJ that can apply for a grant or for a music project. We just send it out in the mailing list, and so like I think you have a really good idea there. Maybe there's a way to get a broader, sweep of all these opportunities, put it all together, and make sure that people have access to it, and we get a really, powerful way to spread that information and pull it together as well, rather than, like you said, to just keep it.
If you know there's a grant and then you keep it to yourself, maybe you're not eligible, but I am.
Exactly.
And I see something. Like, what are we not competing? Like, we can definitely all exist and grow in a way where you guys' mission is, forwarded, and everybody else's mission is forward. Like, whether it's their agenda, whether it's our agenda. I feel like the most important thing for me is safe spaces. We need safe spaces for creatives, for queers, for women, for males, but we need safe spaces. And I feel like if we can find those and share information, we'll grow so much more.
Definitely, because like as soon as a handful of Kenyan artists actually start going abroad and being recognized, and Kenyan music is recognized, it's not going to be just Nigeria and South Africa being, really touted internationally as the Kenyan, the African sound. So I think you're right. We totally benefit from sharing and pooling those resources.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, Bakita, what do you think can be done to ensure that alternative music isn't overpowered by international sound or regional sound in the country at the moment?
I feel like definitely still sitting in collaboration and sharing space in collaboration and, expression with each other definitely will help us keep cultivating our sound and feeling as ourselves, and being able to also cultivate healthy spaces for us to do the same, yeah.
All right. That's it for the panel talk, guys. Thanks for coming through. Shout out to Boiler Room and Valentine's True Music for organizing this amazing opportunity. We're done with day 1. Tomorrow is day 2. There's a masterclass with Gifted Queens. And day 3, where we go crazy, set by Coco M, Boutros, so pull up, let's have fun, and stay true.
Make some noise for Tella, y'all, for hosting this thing. Shout out Tella.
Yeah.
Thank you, Boiler Room. Thank you, Valentine's.